Hey everyone, it's Brad and Josh here, and we welcome you to We'll Bring the Popcorn, the ultimate film and TV podcast.
On today's episode, we're going to be reviewing the new films Wicked for Good and The Running Man.
So during the press tour for Wicked for Good, Ariana Grande and director John M. Chu did tease that there are some ideas being tossed around for a third Wicked movie, but nothing is kind of set in stone, and you kind of figure something like that might happen because of just how big Wicked did in the box office. Of course, we're going to do a review here in a little bit, and Wicked for Good, from what we've already seen, like most of the showings around here were sold out. It's doing gangbusters at it. You know, studio-wise is probably going to be asking for more of it. I just don't know if it's a good idea or not. You're doing the musical. There's still some stuff that they didn't include from the book. The book was, of course, darker and had a lot more to it than this. You also have, of course, a Wizard of Oz movie, and you have stuff that maybe you could do a prequel before Oz took power, the Wizard of Oz took power. You know, not to spoil anything for the ending of Wicked for Good, but there are some ways that you could do a third to kind of continue some of that stuff. But I don't know, story-wise, if it's the best thing to try to keep milking it, because you know the studio will want to. Sure. But is it the right thing to keep going back to it?
It always points me back to the whole conversation of what happens when these properties go beyond source material at this point. We're like, oh, we could take this story in a brand new direction. That's not always the best idea, and it doesn't always turn out the best. Will the market come back for it? Especially if you know you're probably not going to have Cynthia Erivo involved in it, potentially. Or, who knows how much Ariana Grande is going to be a part of it, which she could wind up being the focal point of it, but is she enough to carry the power of this film? Because by all accounts, Cynthia Erivo is like the best part of Wicked, honestly, in my opinion. Like she did such a good job as Elphaba here. Like, is there really a continuation there to really dive into for that story? Because I mean, you can kind of go back and talk about what happens, and I love the twist that Wicked does on the Wizard of Oz story that kind of turns what you know about the story on its head, and we'll get into that when we talk about the film and everything. But when you start going beyond the source material is when I really start to kind of clench my teeth at stuff, because we've seen it. Like, it's easy to kind of always go back and poke at, like, Game of Thrones, obviously, and saw how much of a dip in quality we saw once you got beyond the actual source material and started doing your own thing with it. Yep. It's not always going to turn out the best, and that's an easy one to point to as like an example of why it may not be necessary to do. You get why they want more content out of this, because the original Wicked film did so incredibly well at the box office, and this one's well on its way to doing the exact same. Like you said, the showings we went to were completely packed and full, and everyone was excited and everything, and I think that's going to carry over for a minute here, and it's going to do very, very, very well as well. But I don't know, man. I don't know if it's worth really going back and trying to milk it for a third when they covered everything about the musical that made it as special as it was. So I don't know what they want to do. I get why they're tinkering around with some ideas, but I'm just like, you're playing with fire at that point.
Yeah, like you said, they covered everything in the musical. They didn't cover everything in the book, and, there's different ways to expand on it, but yeah, I just don't feel like it's the right thing. We have so many examples of when you go past the source material that it does wrong, but again, Wicked was something that went past the source material. It was its own version of stuff that didn't exist in the Wizard of Oz canon and everything from where that was created, and it did well, but yeah, like when it comes to this point, it's like, well, you're just kind of doing it to milk it because it's making a lot of money. And, the potential third film isn't the only new potential adaptation that we're going for, because Winnie Holzman, who wrote the script for the Wicked musical, and Steven Schwartz, who composed the musical and the films, they're working on a new Wicked project together. They're saying it's not a sequel to Glinda and Elphaba's story, but a new idea that expands Oz into a new direction. So could potentially they make the third film based on this new musical that they're working on, depending on how well it goes. I mean, they could always see if they put out this new musical project, which he didn't exactly say it was a musical project, but when you've got a couple Broadway people working together on something, you have to think it's another musical that they're putting together. But, we don't know if that could third film could be an adaptation of that if they're working together on that, or if that's going to be something completely different from what they try to do with the third movie.
Yeah, you never know. And hopefully if, they are working on something new together, they have the opportunity to capture the magic of what made Wicked the global juggernaut that it became as far as a Broadway musical thing, because it is one of the most commercially successful Broadway musicals of all time. Like, it's been touring for a long time now, and it's still out there, and it's still having sold out shows. And then you tie it in with people that are going to see the movie. People want to go back and see the musical again. I want to go see another performance of Wicked after having seen both of these films again. Like, it's my personal favorite musical, and it's done so well that I like to see that cycle keep going, as far as, like, you go see the movies and you want to go see the musical because you saw the musical already and you wanted to see the movie, but now you've seen the movie and you want to go back to the musical. I like that it's kind of going full circle with that, but it's going to be interesting to see. I hope if they work on another musical that captures a lot of that same magic, and we have another wonderful musical property that they could potentially do a film with, but we'll see. The jury's still out on that, obviously, but very successful project they worked on before. We'll see if they capture that lightning in a bottle again.
It was part of the problem is that Wicked worked so well because of the change in what they did with Elphaba and Glinda. Like, it was about their story and kind of flipping what we knew about the Good Witch and the Wicked Witch of the West and stuff on its head. And if you're doing something without them, who's going to be your central character?
Right.
I mean, if you're going post-Wicked, who's left within that story? Because, going back to the original Wizard of Oz, the wizard leaves and Dorothy and everyone leaves, and you're left with a few characters left, and you've got things that have changed, but who is going to be your main character now?
Oz becomes this dystopian, futuristic land.
Does it become the Running Man?
It could. That'd be one hell of a tie-in, but no, that's definitely interesting to see how that plays out, and I'm excited to see what they do with it when they decide to come back together and do a new musical that's kind of in that general Oz type of setting, and see where they take it from. And maybe that's the direction they go. We'll see. They talk about expanding it. We'll see if it works, and hopefully we get something good out of it. But I do want to pivot us now into a story talking about one of our personal favorite shows that have come out in the last couple of years, and that is Shogun. You can go back in our archives and check out what we thought about it. Absolutely brilliant show. We're still kind of on the fence about the fact that they are doing a second and potentially third season of the show, because we thought the first one was absolute perfection and such a good show. But now we have some details coming out about season 2. It's actually going to start filming in January in Canada, and it's going to be set about 10 years after the events of season 1.
Yeah, and you've got a few returning characters. You've got a new actor in there that's coming in. We're slowly getting some cast, but I know we're both sad because we lost a lot of people in the first Shogun series of that, who we won't get back, because Mariko was one of the favorite characters of everybody. Anna Sawai was so incredible in that role. Like, she was such a standout, and you're not going to have her in that, of course, for what happened with her character. But yeah, this is another one, kind of like we were just talking about Wicked. Like, this is not source material. Like, there's stuff from the Shogun, from the book that Shogun is adapted from, that there's stuff that they didn't do that they could go back to. But the book series, there's a gigantic gap between the first book and the second book where they're not really even tied together. There's such a, new characters, new setting, new other stuff like that, where these characters don't exist. So they're taking what was supposed to be a miniseries and taking it into a season 2 outside of the source material. So that's why we're still hesitant on it, because we gave Shogun a 10 out of 10. Like, it was a fantastic show that we all thought was a single instance. Like, this is experience, and that's where we're at. Now you do have Hiroki Sanada, who's back as executive producer, and he's starring in it again. So he was one of the forefront runners of making sure that they do justice to Japanese culture and to these characters. So having him on board still makes me a little bit more excited about it, but it's still a little hesitant, because you're going into this territory of stories that don't exist, and you're continuing it on because it was so popular, not exactly because you had another story you wanted to tell.
Yeah.
Because it felt like the writers were having to jump in, like, okay, the studio wants another season. Okay, let's figure something out.
Yeah, and hopefully it's not just thrown together like that because it was so magical. You also got Cosmo Jarvis coming back as John. He was incredible in season one. One of the few actors that didn't get recognized for any awards come reward season, which was kind of surprising because we had all kinds of praise for him and his performance on this. We're also getting the introduction of some new characters, like you mentioned. We've got, famed Japanese singer and actor Ren Maguro, who's joining the cast in a new role that hasn't been disclosed as of yet, but it's going to be more family drama focused and maybe not as much like it's kind of the theme around season one as well, but it feels like it's going to be some kind of new drama in finding overall ways to bring overall peace to Japan based on what we've seen about the script so far. So it's going to be interesting, but man, I really, really hope we get a worthy follow-up to such an incredible show that we love so much. And I need to go back and watch it again. I still haven't because I want to hold that specialness of the show, that having seen it already, and I kind of do want to go back and kind of binge through and watch the entire season. It may take a day now that we're getting into like some colder months and, we're not going to be as outdoorsy as we have been and kind of more at home with it being cold and flipping to the winter months and, late fall, early winter here, the opportunity there to do it. And I want to take probably a whole day and just kind of sit and binge that show and just relive some of that magic that we got. Because if you haven't seen it by now, go check it out. It's on, if you have Disney with Hulu and, you have the option to watch it there, go check it out. It's worth the watch 10 times out of 10.
So incredible to me that they did the first season and they're doing the second season in Vancouver in Canada because it looked fantastic. It looked like a feudal type Japan in there. And they said, it's very difficult, not only because of like tax breaks and other things you need to get from like Japan to be able to film there, but Japan is, mostly a smaller area, and there's not too many areas that don't have modern buildings anymore. That's right. Not technologically advanced where they can shoot things that look like it was done, way back then. So, Canada and finding an open area where they can build these towns and build these buildings and everything else. And of course, CGI, some other stuff to make it look more like Japan. But yeah, it was just incredible to me to learn that they did it all in Vancouver, that's just a big shout out, not only to the actors and writers and everybody else, but to the production designers. Amazing. Because they did an incredible design building the sets. And like, we're excited, but we're hesitant because we just don't want it to hurt and ruin that legacy of that first. So yeah, you'll still have the first season if it's bad, but it's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth if you go and you watch the second season and it's nowhere near the quality of the first season.
For sure.
Then it's going to make you feel a little more off and bad because you want to be able to see the whole story of these characters. And if we had a whole story in one season, but now we're saying it's 2 seasons, because I think they already greenlit 2 and 3.
I believe so, yeah.
So it's not only just one season; they're expanding a mini series into 3 seasons. It's left a lot of us hesitant.
It's not a mini series anymore at this point. It's a full on TV show, and we're getting 3 seasons worth of it potentially. And just got to keep your fingers crossed that season 2 lives up to the hype from season 1. Because man, what an act to follow! Like it's a heck of a show to have to follow, and they got the work cut out for them. But we'll see what we get from them.
And we've talked about how much fans we are of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and how that was our childhood growing up, and our love for the original movies with the the 1990 live action that they did. But we got some good news and a few bad news for Turtles fans. So the good news is Paramount is working on doing another live-action Teenage Mutant Turtle movie. It was 2016 when Out of the Shadows came out, and not many fans were big fans of those. I mean, they made the Turtles gigantic and bulky, and the CGI wasn't terrible, but it was just really weird because they gave them, like, noses and everything else, and it wasn't fun, that fun for a lot of Turtle fans. So they're bringing back a new live action, so this is going to be its own thing, not connected to those. But they say they're trying to Sonicify the Turtles franchise, which I guess more means that they're just trying to have more fun, lighthearted, family-friendly Ninja Turtle movies. But, Sonic started off a little rough, but those 3 films have been really fantastic. Like, they were really well done, so it gives me a little bit of hope if they say they're trying to Sonicify it, that, well, it could still be really good.
Yeah, I mean, if they're trying to do that, that is more of a positive for me personally than just diving back in and trying a formula that keeps for whatever reason not working. But yeah, I'm excited about this potential opportunity for them to really dive in and, do a new, potentially family friendly version of the Ninja Turtles, because they've always been kind of lighthearted. Now, some of the older comic stories are a lot darker that they could have adapted. And I know one that everyone was really excited about was the potential live action Last Ronin film that was going to be this R-rated film. And I say was going to be because unfortunately some of the bad news that's coming out of it is that is on hold for now, potentially shelved indefinitely. We don't know when they're going to come back and visit it, but that has been put on the shelf. And that part of it is a little disappointing because I know a lot of us, especially those of us that grew up watching it, were really hoping, especially with how brilliant the Last Ronin story is. If you've never read the Last Ronin comic story, go out of your way to check it out. It is a really fantastically well done comic story about the last surviving Ninja Turtle and how he pays tribute to his brothers, and the kind of the fun is trying to figure out which one it actually was that survived and kind of carried the mantle for the rest of them. And it was a really, really well done story. And it's a little disappointing that they're not going to have that coming anytime soon, but it doesn't feel like it's necessarily completely out of the realm of possibility yet.
Yeah, we'll just have to see. All this is happening because Paramount was bought by new owners. And, the billionaire ownership is making a lot of changes. They're also still going after Warner Brothers and trying to purchase them and have a monopoly of studios and properties here because that would give them DC and everything else. But, yeah, that's disappointing because I was really, when they announced it, everybody was looking forward to it. All right, we're getting a dark, gritty, rated R, hard-hitting Last Ronin film. And we haven't heard anything about it. And then, well, yeah, the new ownership killed it, but they also killed off something else that seemed to be going really well for them. And so we got Seth Rogen's Teenage Mutant Turtles Mutant Mayhem film that did really well. And that was supposed to be kind of starting this universe where they have video games and they have TV series. And we did get the first season of one of those series, which was Tales of the Teenage Mutant Turtles. Well, the new owners came in and canceled it right in the middle of production. So they've got enough episodes done that they're putting out a season 2. Apparently that's going to drop in December. I think January to be on Nickelodeon. But they killed it in the middle. They had a 4-season order for this series, and they killed it in the middle of season 2. So that's pretty disappointing, and that makes you wonder, like, we do have a second Mutant Mayhem film that'll be out, I think, in 2026 or 2027. But does that also potentially spell an end for that franchise too? Like because they said the series wasn't in their vision, but it's very closely tied into the film series. So do they consider the film series not to be in their vision either?
Yeah, it sounds like this is the unfortunate part with corporate mergers is you have plans in place and things that people get excited about, and you just come in and get it wiped out because new people, new agendas, and you start to see the fallout of that is in something like this. And it's a little disappointing because we've gone back, and you can go back in our archives and check out how we feel about these things, but we did our review of Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and talked about how we enjoyed it and how it ties into Mutant Mayhem. And Mutant Mayhem is a really, really good return to kind of form of like Ninja Turtles being teenagers, actual teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with the young voice cast and everything that they had for it, and it was really well done. And it sounds like it could potentially be coming to a halt with the end of this film in this season. Like, we don't know if there's going to be anything beyond that, and it's a little disappointing. But this is what you have. This is what happens when you get these corporate mergers, and these guys are chopping things off here, and it's kind of disappointing, man, because I really liked what they were doing and what they were building, but here we go. We'll see what happens. At least we're getting the Last Ronin video game. There's a positive to come
potentially, because it was announced in 2023 that the studio had layoffs in 2024, and we haven't heard anything else. It's almost 2026. We haven't got any potential updates. It's in development with THQ and stuff, but we haven't heard anything else on that, so we don't know if that property's dead. And I also wonder if the new ownership is planning a new animated series, because we don't have currently running a traditional Teenage Mutant Turtles series like we've had. We've had so many different from when the 1989 series started, the animated, series. We haven't had, I think it's been a couple years since the last one ended, so maybe they canceled it because they're planning on a brand new, not tied to any other kind of reboot animated series for the Turtles as well, and they didn't want to have any confusion between, that. Maybe they'll leave Mutant Mayhem going as a film series, and then they're creating their own new animated, but we don't really know. They didn't say anything else other than they're just canceling this and right in the middle of production. Like, animation takes a very long time, and it takes a lot of people and a lot of time, and you have a 4-season order, and you think you're sitting pretty for many years, because you think that's at least 1 to 2 years per season of working on stuff, and it's dead before you even fully finish season 2. Because as far as we've heard, they didn't fully finish season 2. Yeah. That it's whatever they got done is what's coming out.
And you wonder if what they're putting out is even going to wrap up any potential story they got or lead into what the movie is going to be, or if there's gaps in stories, which is unfortunate, but it's the hand that we're dealt. So if we get these last episodes of the animated series next month, the way it's sounding, we'll have to check them out and see what they give us, and we'll have to talk about it for sure. But I want to move us into our last story that we have, which is kind of another franchise. I know this one is kind of close to you, but we're getting word about a new potential Stargate series in the work at Amazon, which we both love the original Stargate film, obviously, that came out almost a little over 30 years ago now, which is crazy considering when you still watch it, it still doesn't look like it came out 30 years ago.
All the way back in 1994.
And a lot of things, and it hurts my heart to say 30 years ago and talk about 1994. But you have Martin Garrow, who was the writer of the 3 Stargate TV shows that have come out, is kind of serving as a showrunner for this, so you get a little bit of that continuity from before. So it's definitely a lot to look forward to in this one.
Yeah, he's writing, executive producing, and show running it, so at least you have someone who's connected, because the movie and the 3 shows became cult classics like almost right away. The shows were really popular. I think the last season of the final show wrapped in 2011, so it's been a little bit since we've had anything Stargate, but I watched the series. I didn't watch all of them all the way through, but I enjoyed them. But it's still, the movie has a place in my heart as a guilty pleasure. I mean, you got James Spader and Kurt Russell, and you just have that introduction of this portal that takes you back into ancient Egypt. Of course, the show expands the portal into so many different directions from that, but there's just so much fun stuff in that movie that gave you that mix of military with ancient Egypt, and you got to see, like, it was such a fun film that I'm kind of looking forward to that. Maybe I'll jump into this. Like, we don't know if it's supposed to be any sort of continuation of anything else that's been done in the Stargate universe between the shows and the film, or if they're going to just completely kind of reboot, restart, and act like it's new, and which kind of makes more sense. Like, it's going to be 15, 16 years before this show is out from the last one that came out, and as you said, over 30 years from when the film came out, so it should be a complete and full reboot, and I'm kind of looking forward to checking it out.
Yeah, it's definitely one that they get excited about if you're a fan of that sci-fi, military, futuristic, but not futuristic kind of way of going about things. But it's a really fun story to kind of dive back into, and I'm excited to see what they do with it.
So we don't have a release date or anything for it yet. It's going to be happening over on Amazon, who has been picking up a lot of different properties here and doing fairly well with them so far, even though everyone's a little mixed on Lord of the Rings and how they've handled that show. We've enjoyed it. A lot of other people haven't enjoyed it as much, but I think they've done fairly well with Reacher and all these other shows. So I'm kind of looking forward with it. You got Amazon with plenty of money to throw behind it. You got someone who was involved with the series, the 3 series before. Get a modern, see what the Stargate and everything looks like with modern technology and CGI and stuff. That I'm looking forward to see what this is. But with how much probably CGI and other work it'll need, we're probably not going to see this before probably 2027.
Easily at the earliest, because there's so much that has to go into it with visual effects. Like you said, like, it's going to take a while to do, but we hear all the time about these things being delayed 3, 4, 5 years. So it could be 2027, 2028 even before we could see it, depending on how much they really invest in it. But Amazon's got some really, really solid shows on it that I'm more looking forward to this when it comes out because of the success of some of the other shows that they've had on there. I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Yeah, we're still up in the air about their handling of James Bond, but we'll have to wait and see on that because we still got a while. He's just wrapping up Dune 3, but he's still got all the editing and stuff to do, and it won't be until next year that we really start hearing any solid details out of Bond. So we're nervous about that one, but they've done well with the other stuff. But that series that we're for their film and potentially, they've talked about doing a Bond universe that could be more shows and everything else. We just hope that Amazon does right by these legacy, properties and doesn't just run them into the ground.
Yeah, that's the hope. So jury's out, and we'll see where they go with it.
We are now partnered with Dubby Energy. Dubby is a clean energy drink to give you focus with no crash or jitters like other energy drinks.
Dubby contains vitamins, amino acids, and 150 milligrams of caffeine. It also features 0 calories, no sugar, no fillers, and no artificial dyes.
From Dragonade and S'mores to Push and Punch and Galaxy Grenade, Dubby has a wide range of flavors for you to choose from.
Use code WBTP to save 10% off your Dubby Energy orders, and look for a direct link in the audio and video descriptions.
So our first film review of this week is Wicked for Good. So this is, of course, the continuation of Wicked that we got last winter. It's also the second half of the musical that, they kind of split it exactly as a musical did in there. We're picking up with Elphaba is the Wicked Witch of the West now that, Oz has turned everybody against her. She's on the run. We have Glinda is still kind of playing her part with Oz because she just craves that attention and can't get away from it, even though she knows what's not being good and what's wrong about it. She just can't help herself because, she gets her bubble ride and she's got her own room inside of, the great city here and everything. And it really deals more with that relationship of Elphaba's trying to spread the word that the Wizard of Oz is a terrible person and he's a bad person who's, persecuting the animals and not treating them like they should, and that she has been wrongly accused of all this stuff that she hasn't done. And, Glinda is just kind of playing the role of the good witch for the people to help the propaganda from, the Wizard of Oz. And this second half definitely goes a lot more into the political side of Wicked, of the Wizard of Oz and stuff, because it's definitely showing and going on about how one person or a group of people can have such control over an entire nation, an entire country of people.
Yeah, it's definitely leaning heavier into plot and character story, because you have obviously Elphaba, who's made out to be she's the scapegoat of the entire thing, and she's fighting to not only prove her well intentions and prove that she actually is good, but try to have people recognize that the wizard is a fraud and doesn't actually have any magical abilities and can't really help people the way he says he's helping people. And it's a lot of just, smoke and mirrors and show and all of that stuff. And they really dive heavy into that in this back half, where I've always said that Wicked is a story that the first half has the more iconic music and incredible songs to it, because the second half of it does have a couple of reprises from songs from the first half of it, and it's not as iconic original song heavy in the second half of it. Now, there is one song in particular that I absolutely love in the second half of this that they do a phenomenal job, in my opinion, in this film, and we'll get to that in a minute, but this is all about, the fallout from that and, fighting. It's basically fighting against the machine at this point, that's the whole heart of the story. And that's where I like that Wicked kind of turns everything on its head that we've alluded to earlier, where the Wicked Witch isn't necessarily a wicked witch, it's kind of a different way of going about it. It's like she's wicked in the eyes of what beholder here. Like, the only thing you knew about her being a wicked witch is because she's fully embraced that, like, okay, you want me to be the bad guy, I'm going to be the bad guy. And you kind of have that laid out in this film that I think they do such a good job of, especially, with it being the second half of this incredibly iconic musical, that I really think they did a good job with this. Like you said, it always, I know people that love Wicked that always feel like it's a first half musical and the second half is kind of weaker and kind of limps to the end. I don't necessarily agree with that, because I like the story and the entirety of the story that they tell. Yeah, the more iconic songs are in the first half of the musical, but there's some really solid musical numbers in the second half too that I think more than hold their own. And that's kind of the hill I've always been willing to die on when it comes to Wicked. But I really feel like they did a really solid second half of this. in wrapping up this story from this musical and done in the film way that they've done it. Like it's a really solid follow up in my opinion.
And I think you hit it where a lot of people feel the second half is weaker, and I do feel that this has a few issues that the second half of the musical has, but I think they did a solid job of trying to bring in the emotion and ending it and doing a few improvements. Like, it doesn't change much from the musical. Like, this was pretty much trying to do a pretty faithful adaptation of what the musical did and stuff, but I do have to agree that music-wise, the first movie kind of blew it out of the water because it had bigger productions and dances and everything. With this one, the music felt a little choppier. Like, it's got some good songs, but you have, like, you might get a song that's sung for like 30 seconds and then they go into talking or something happens and they do another like 30-second bit and they go into talking. And there was also a couple songs, like the two newer songs, was a little strange in the fact that it was a very simple filming of it. Like, they just basically set a camera down and they're like Alphabet sitting down and singing almost the entire song. Like, you get the emotion and stuff they're trying to get behind it, but compared to like the over-the-top singing and dancing of the first film, you have much more subdued songs in this one, where it's very much just like, yeah, we're just putting it down, the camera down, and just recording. And then it's a little nitpicky with it and stuff, but it did feel like the songs were not as big of an importance to the second half than it was to the first half. Like, For Good was phenomenal, like them doing that song together and the performances together, but there were some other bits of the songs that just felt like really choppy in the second half.
Well, sure, and that's kind of the whole point of the musical too. Like, the first half, you have this whimsical story of getting to this point where now you get to that apex point of them meeting the wizard and realizing he's not who he is, but you have the whole dichotomy of Glinda still wanting and needing acceptance from everybody and needing to be loved and adored by everybody to kind of take on that face of the good witch. And then you have Elphaba, who, like you said, becomes the scapegoat and becomes, if you're the hero long enough, you be the hero long enough to see yourself become the villain kind of thing. And it's kind of that story with her. And she goes and, she tries and tries until she leans in and realizes that no matter how good she tries to do, something is always going to go terribly wrong. And I kind of want to take that opportunity to really play up the fact that the second half is a more subdued story and it is more of a darker turn, and that's what I love so much about it, is because you have the light and the dark, and they're not afraid to play with both parts of it, because as fantastical and whimsical as the first half is, the second half is always a much more subdued, darker story. Like, you get to play in both worlds, and that's where I think they got the tone of both films right, in my opinion, because For Good is a little bit more of the more emotion-based, more like heavy into character, more dialogue, more drama than you get in the fantastical, whimsical first half that, everybody loves, but there's just as strong a story that they tell in the back half of this that I think they really nailed in this. And I agree, they don't dive as much into the full musical performances because you get the reprises that they don't really, and that's what you're alluding to, is the reprises are a lot shorter because you get all of those songs in the originals in the first half. Like, you get all the originals, and they come back and kind of lightly play with the melodies and some of the things from the songs in the second half of it, which is very faithful from the musical, right? They don't have the full performances, and I think that's where they cut the movie down about 30 minutes from the first one. It was almost 3 hours long, and this one's a little over 2. It's like, I think it's like 2 hours and 15 minutes or
something
so.
Around there,
yeah, it's like a 30-minute shorter movie, so they kind of cut some stuff down, which I kind of appreciated that they did, because it was more focused on the story they were telling. But I do want to say, and this is all love, I think Ariana Grande had the weaker original song by far of the two. Cynthia Erivo can sing the phone book, and I'm here to listen to it. Ariana's a phenomenal singer as well. Like, she's an incredible vocalist too. But Cynthia Erivo, man, she's got something special to her. And I want to take the opportunity now to talk about my favorite song in the entire thing. It's No Good Deed. No Good Deed was incredibly done here, which, a little light spoilery, it's about her trying to save Fiero's life after he kind of makes this sacrifice to help Elphaba get away from, the guards who are trying to take her in and, basically kill her. They're like, she's kind of got a warrant out on her head. Like, that sacrifice and he kind of pays for it, and that's where the whole no good deed goes unpunished kind of thing, and that's where she really leans into being the wicked part of the witch, or does she, wink nod kind of thing or whatever. But that was just absolutely fantastic. In my opinion, No Good Deed is like one of the 3 best songs in the entire musical, and they did a phenomenal job of just visually capturing everything going on there. And you throw on top of it a world-class singer like Cynthia Erivo.
I mean, her power in
absolutely, absolutely killed that song, and it's one of the better songs in the musical, and she just absolutely destroyed it and was really a highlight of the film for me, honestly.
Yeah, without Ariana and Cynthia being as good as they are in this film, like if they weren't as good, this film wouldn't have been anywhere near. Like they carried both films, but they really carried this more because it is the kind of the back and forth on them. We get the wizard in there, and Jeff Goldblum is still fun as a wizard, but we don't get as much. And, you know, we have Michelle Yeoh as Madame Morrible in there, and she doesn't have as much as you just want to absolutely loathe and hate her in this film.
She's really good at that.
So, like, and the other side characters are also really very much side characters, and, like, it's really heavily focused on what these two are going through, but a little bit more nitpicky stuff with it, and it's the same problems that the second half of the musical had, is that you get that time jump, but there's at the beginning, but you really don't know how much time has gone by, because, you know, Elphaba, she's created her own lair somewhere else, and Glinda's moved to the Emerald City, and she has her own stuff, and you've got a lot of different things going on, but you don't really know how much time has passed. Yeah. But there's a whole lot that they try to do in this film, so there's a lot of kind of very quickness to the story. We've got to go, we're dealing with the animals here. We're dealing with the Yellow Book Road being built. We're dealing with Glinda and her interactions with the Oz, and you got everything with Elphaba. But you also get the inclusion of the Wizard of Oz stuff, because we get to see Dorothy and the gang going in there. But if you know the Wicked story, there's some backstory to the creation of the Tin Man and the Scarecrow and everything like that. And you get the Cowardly Lion, which I didn't feel the Cowardly Lion story was as strong as the other two, because you get to feel more of the emotion with those two. And the Cowardly Lion, like, did they even show anything about that cub and everything else in the first Wicked? It was one, like, I just don't remember how that does. Like, I enjoyed that. You know, it ties into the Wizard of Oz, but there's also some changes and everything else they do with it. And you get Dorothy in there, which they try not to show her face. You get some profiles to it, because, I mean, how are you going to try to recast and redo that? But you do get a little bit of it. But I liked that integration and going into that and everything. Got to see Toto and all that. But there's just so much quickness that happens in this, because, you've got the Elphaba and Fiero's story and stuff, which also, when you have young kids, one part of that's like, oh, okay, I forgot about this area. And they didn't go too much into it, but it's like, I think I jokingly covered your eyes during that scene and everything. But it's a very kind of quick-hitting film with this. Like, you've got a much smoother story in the first Wicked, because there's just so much they have to cover in that time span. Yeah,
I feel like the first story flowed better, like, as far as the presentation of it. It did feel like they kind of stunted. But you got to remember, too, like, this is almost 5 hours worth of there's a lot to cover. Of a film that's expanding more on than what even the musical did, really, because the musical was a shorter version of that, because the musical itself is only like 3 hours. So you gotta figure they're even expanding more, but it did feel kind of stilted when it came to going into those details. But I do want to kind of go back to one of your points that you made about Dorothy in particular. It was a conscious I don't know if many people know this, but John M. Chu has come out since the film has been out now, and has said it was intentional never to show the entire face of Dorothy, to kind of keep that ode to the original and have Judy Garland really be the one face of Dorothy, really, to kind of really keep that alive and not really go back to that, because there's a young lady that did get the chance to be Dorothy in this film that never really shows her face, and it's a pretty cool story about how she gets to it if you get a chance to look into it. But I love that they intentionally didn't show, like, Dorothy's face throughout this, because Dorothy's really not a central character in this story anyway. She's more of an ancillary, and I love how they kind of just toy around with it a little bit in the movie, where she's just kind of running off, and you just cut to a really tight shot of Ariana's like, all right, bye, Dorothy, good luck. You know, it's just kind of having some fun with it, and the fact that they're not showing her face, but it was really well done. But I appreciate the fact that they kept that respect to
that was absolutely kind of a good respect to show.
Yeah, because they very easily could have. Obviously, if you go see the play, you see the face of the girl that's playing Dorothy in it, but like. I love that they intentionally didn't show her face. Like
the rest of the gang, they have to because they're part of the Wicked story.
Correct, and there's more meat behind that, and Dorothy's just kind of like a she's here. You know who she is and what she's about. We tell that story somewhere else. We don't really dive into that here. That's one of the things I've always really appreciated about it. But I think they did a good job of that in the movie too.
Yeah, because you also get to see the tornado that brings Dorothy there from a different angle and everything else too, and you get the story of Elphaba's sister that we're very sympathetic to in the first one, but she definitely has to a point, but she gets a more of her villain arc that hits in here because she's in love with someone that's not in love with her, and it causes her to kind of spiral out of control with things. But that's also very quickly cut through with everything. As like I said, there's just so much they have to go through, and it didn't hurt the movie for me, but it is some nitpicking and knocks that I have to give to the film because it was cramming so much that we didn't really get to sit with those characters too much more. That the rest of the group of Glinda and Elphabas were very much kind of tossed to the side and had very little moments. And even Fiyero, he had his big moments, but that's it. He had those big moments, but the rest of it was, really focusing on Glinda and Elphaba, which again, if those two were not as great as they were, this film would not have been anywhere near as good. And I think Ariana did a great job.
She's
there's some talking about how she's made it from pop star to being a star for acting. She acted before she was a pop star, so she showed that she could be. It was a Disney show with Victorious that she showed that she could be fun and whimsical and do some decent stuff. And then she showed that even being such a small person, she has such an incredibly powerful voice.
Unbelievable.
And she does get chances to show that off in here. But just you do get Elphaba getting the more deeper, powerful, belting songs and for this, but I do love the emotion, especially because they became really good friends, and they filmed both of these films at the same time. So I think even Ariana came out and said, 3 days a week I would be doing the happy, bubbly, loopy Glinda from the first film, and then the next 2 or 3 days of the week I would be getting into the darker, depressing, emotional Glinda from the second film. So it wasn't that they did the first film and then they did the second film. They were literally shooting it all at the same time, which bravo to both of them to be able to pull off the emotion and the range and be able to show that, because you definitely get to see that Glinda has changed and that there's changes in her, and she's dealing with a lot of emotional weight and heaviness because she wants to be there for Elphaba, but she can't just give up the spotlight. She can't stop being Glinda the good for all of Emerald City because she just cannot give up that feeling. And she even admits to it in the movie. You get that touching point where she realizes, wouldn't you? When you have all this love and admiration from everybody, and there is just a good storyline between those of their growth and their change and the emotion of the characters and stuff. But I think overall, they did a good job with Wicked for Good. It does have some of the same trappings and issues that the second half of the musical has, but I think they did a really good job of ending it on a really solid note. And without giving the ending away, I do like the way the Wicked story and the musical kind of dealt with one of the more ridiculous parts of Wizard of Oz and of what happens with the Wicked Witch of the West and stuff, and how they kind of change and do that, because it was always, that was 1930s, and they're having a ridiculous way that the witch can be destroyed by water and everything else, and they play with that in a different way in this that I enjoy, because even to this day that's still a ridiculous way that you're going to dispatch the villain of the story by throwing water on her.
Oh, what a world, right? But it does such a good job of keeping all of that together, though. And I really think they did this effectively. Like you said, it can feel in some ways that it was kind of rushed, but at the end, I don't think it really took that much away from the story, because you really hit all the notes that you needed to hit. And like you said, man, Ariana and Cynthia really did a lot of the heavy lifting in this, and kudos to both of them because neither one were really like who you would think of as like elite level actresses necessarily. Both incredibly phenomenal performers and singers, but Cynthia probably has a little bit more acting cred than Ariana has, but this has both made them incredibly like popular superstars, pun somewhat intended with popular, but like it's really elevated them, I think, to a new place where maybe they get the opportunity to carry more things going forward. I know, like, outside of this, Ariana's getting ready to go on a world tour in 2026 that she's mentioned could be her last as a musician before she really goes into headfirst into the acting bug that really seems to have a grasp on her now. But incredible performances from both of them through both of these movies. And yeah, just the ability to jump from one headspace to another when you're filming basically two diametrically opposed tonal films at the same time is an incredibly difficult thing to pull off because you got to get yourself in that headspace. And I really do think they did a phenomenal job of showing that emotion in the second half, in the second film as well, that they did such a good job there because you see the exasperation from, you know, Elphaba and Cynthia here. Like, she's trying everything she can and she knows she's right, but she just can't get through to people. And you see that exasperation on her face, and she emotes that so well, and she really captures the spirit of that. And you see Ariana here, who knows what she's doing isn't right, and she's still trying to go out of her way to help her friend without really sacrificing her own standing. And then I love how her story really comes full circle by the end of the film too, where she winds up still kind of doing the same thing, but respectfully for a different reason for you know, what happens at the end of the film. And it's a really cool story that I'm glad they adapted into a film, and they did a really phenomenal job of it in both parts.
How does she fly that bubble? Like, they showed how they pull the bubble, but how does she fly it? There's no steering wheel. There's no anything else. Like, how does she fly it?
It's intuitive.
Like, is it voice activated? You're like, take me to Munchkin Land, and it just flies her. That was just something. That's not being nitpicky. That was just something fun to me because, like, they explain that it's an Oz creation, that it's got these tools and stuff, but it's made to look magical because you get, you know, it's a theme throughout here and throughout the first one that Glinda is not exactly as magical as everyone thinks she is, and so they have to fake a lot of it. And that was a fun sequence as she gets to, because you got to see a little bit of the bubble at the end of the first one, but now you're getting her learning, and she's just popping it over and over again. And there are, like we said, it is a darker, more emotional story, but there are some fun moments, and I don't want to spoil it, but we were cackling when there was a fight sequence that happened on the yellow brick road and stuff. That was just, it looked like they had so much fun. And it, especially like for that was all Ariana. Like, she was incredible in that sequence because she was just so silly and goofy and rabid and everything else. And it was just so
really funny.
So funny to watch that sequence. Like, I can't even remember if that was in the musical or not, but if it was something they just did for the film, like, it was something to break up a really kind of harder emotional scene with some humor.
Yeah, it doesn't go into that level of detail that they do for that, but it was so funny. It was so well done, and that's where Ariana really shined as well, because she really got to let loose and have some fun in that scene, and you could just tell she was really enjoying it. You could tell they both had a good time with that. That was one of the highlights of the film for me as well.
Yeah, so Wicked for Good is a solid, I mean, it's one story done in two films here, especially in the musical. It's done in two parts. This is done in two parts as well. I think they do a solid job of telling the ending of the story, of bringing the emotion and heart into it. I do think to me, it does suffer from some of the issues that the second half of the musical has, which the time jump with kind of trying to cram a lot of stuff into a short amount of time. Doesn't allow the songs to breathe as much, doesn't allow the story to breathe as much, because there's some, like, you can go back and forth, and Elphaba is trying to shut down the wizard, then you get a part where, all right, she might be listening to him, and then it's instantly 2 minutes later, she's back. It's like there's a lot of quick cuts that happen. Like, I gave Wicked a 9.5 before. I'm going to take this down to an 8.5. It's still a really good film.
Yeah.
that does have a few issues, kind of the same as a musical has, but I think Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo were fantastic. They really carried the second half. If they weren't as good as they were, this film wouldn't have been as high to me as it was. There's some things that they did that just felt a little like too haphazard that they did, or just too simple with some of the filming, that they just seemed to like let the camera sit still and film some things and not really go into the elaborate production that this has been. But it's still a very solid 8.5. It's a good film. They did a really good job. It does have 2 to 3 really good song performances in here, some good acting and stuff, but like I said, it does still have a few of the same problems because it's fairly faithful to the musical. Like, they didn't try to change too much, and what they did change worked well for the film.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm surprised with the way you've gone through it, that you scored it that highly. I thought you were going to go down to maybe a 7.5 or an 8 when you got to it. But yeah, I landed on an 8.5 as well, because I think I gave it a 9.5 or maybe even a 10.
I think you gave it a 10.
I think I did, and I knock it down just a little bit because it does suffer from some pacing issues. But man, they really nailed, in my opinion, the tone of the film, the music in it. It's not as there's not as many iconic songs in the second half of it, because there are a lot of reprises from the first half of the musical in the second half. So it doesn't always carry through musically the same as the first half, which when you end on a song as amazing as Defying Gravity is, it's such a defining song for the musical itself. It's hard to really follow on with that with stronger musical numbers in the back half, but I really want to emphasize my love for No Good Deed. Cynthia Erivo just absolutely destroys that song. Like, she crushed it in so many ways, and I love the way they captured that whole visual, because that's where the film really showed a lot of its spectacle and its whimsicalness, and really just a heavy focus on the tone of the story at that point, because that whole sequence with that song was amazing. There's a fun musical number with Jeff Goldblum in it as well that we really didn't touch on in our review. That was a lot of fun as well. But I mean, For Good is obviously an incredible song that they do together to capture kind of that emotional weight at the end of them just being exhausted with everything that's kind of happened. And
you can tell there's some real emotions between the actors in that as well.
Because you can tell that's kind of like it's the end of their story together. It actually wasn't the last scene that they filmed together, which was actually right before Defying Gravity, which was where you could see they were a lot more emotional in that one, because that was the last scene they did get to film together. But they really captured that emotion in this one too. Like, that might have been the next to last scene that they filmed together. Could you imagine going from For Good into right before Defying Gravity like that? Just an emotional heavy. And hats off to Ariana and Cynthia for really carrying these two films and really hopefully now taking that next step into acting superstardom for both of them, because I really feel like they're both going to get award nominations for this, and I really hope Cynthia gets it this time, because she's just so incredible and does such a phenomenal job, not only with her incredible singing voice, but her acting in these films was incredible as well. I'm giving it an 8.5. I don't feel like it's that heavy of a drop off from the first one, because they are so tonally different, as is Wicked. It's a two-tone musical that I really appreciate, because it goes through such a wide range of emotions. You get the fantastical, whimsical nature of it, and then you get like this darker, more brooding, emotional story in the second half that kind of wraps things up. And I think they did a phenomenal job on both films. I really do. Like, this is a really solid adaptation of what is an iconic musical that they did a really good job of, and they could not have picked two better leads for this than Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo. This film would not be anywhere near as good, either part, if it weren't for these two doing the heavy lifting in this. Two phenomenal singers whose acting honestly really surprised me for both of them in this, and just how good they were.
Yeah, Ariana got to show such a range, because she got to be more of that whimsical, goofy, silly girl in the first one, but you got to see her be heartfelt and emotional, and things are bothering her, and you can see that on her face and her eyes. Like, she's very expressive with her eyes, and we've even seen it from her Saturday Night Live performances, that she has a range. Like, she can do so many different type of skits on there, and she showed a range in here as well. I won't be surprised that after she's done doing her last tour there, that there's going to be more movies. She's done the third Fockers movie, where she's, I think, playing the fiance of the kids in that, or one of the boy in that. But you're going to see more acting. I 100% expect her to do a Broadway run as well. Like, she's going to do, whether if they do a new version of Wicked, I don't know if I exactly see her returning for that, but I think she's going to do theater for a while because it gets to allow her to act and it allows her to sing and have kind of everything all in there. I 100% expect her to go in to do some plays, some musicals, and some other stuff on Broadway outside of continuing on acting in movies and stuff like that.
Yeah, I hope so. She's a phenomenal talent, and hopefully she continues on in that. But Wicked for Good is in theaters now. Go check it out. This movie is going to do gangbusters at the box office like this one did. Earlier reports are it's going to be one of the highest opening weekends for a film in a long time. Like, this is going to do a lot of business. I think on preview night it was like the 5th best preview night.
Well, it cracked the top 10.
Yeah, that's what it was.
The other 9 is Star Wars and Marvel.
Yeah, so you're in good company when you're doing business like that.
When you're a musical doing business like that with Star Wars and Marvel.
And it just speaks to the power of not only how popular Wicked is as a musical, but how well they really did for this one and the excitement going into it. And they followed up in a way that was a very satisfying conclusion to this musical that I'm very happy that they did such a good job on both of these films, and it was a fun journey, man. We had a good time watching these.
Yeah, and we have Zootopia 2 coming out Thanksgiving week, but I fully expect Wicked to have a really strong second week, and that you've kind of got similar that families are going to go to Wicked and go to Zootopia, but I have a feeling Wicked is not going to have a very big fall off over Thanksgiving break. I think it's going to perform. I don't know if it'll beat Zootopia 2 because it's a Disney film that did gangbusters when the first one came out. I think the second one's going to do good, but I think your 1 and 2 this week is Wicked for Good and Zootopia. Like, not in that order, but it could be. Like, we don't know how much, because the box office has been so strange that films that you expect to do well aren't doing well, or if they do good in the first week, they can have a monumental drop in the second week. But yeah, I don't think Wicked's going to have that drop.
Yeah, this week is a big week for theaters, especially like Thanksgiving. I know Thanksgiving and Christmas, for whatever reason, always wind up being big time, like, movie going, like, weekends and stuff. Maybe it's just the time off people have and they go and take it, but it seems like Thanksgiving and Christmas always have big ones. That was never really a big thing for you and I, like, growing up either. It was always, like, hanging out and family time, but I've always been surprised to see how well theaters do on these types of holiday weekends, and I'm excited for, Zootopia next week, obviously, but I imagine the theaters are going to be super, super packed this weekend, and I know we've already got our tickets for Zootopia to kind of go, and we'll touch on that at the end. But yeah, like it's going to hold up very well. I can imagine them putting out another sing-along version of this probably after this whole thing wraps up and they start to lose a little bit of momentum. I could see them putting a single.
Probably right before Avatar to try to. Because once Avatar hits, that's just a train you don't want to be in front of.
That's a different monster and beast entirely. Like, that's just going to dominate too, and we'll see what happens when it comes to that for sure.
Yeah, I think Thanksgiving, Christmas has always been one more about those who may not have families to spend time with, or the more single folk and everybody else like that who are going out to films. But you do surprisingly have a lot of family films and things that they go together. Then it might just because kids are off school and parents are taking off work to spend time with them, and so if there's a fun movie to go see, they go to the theaters because it's a somewhat cheap, not as cheap as it used to be when we were kids, to go have some, a couple hours of enjoyment to keep the kids busy while they're off of school and, keeping them from destroying our houses during that time.
Definitely one to take out and, take the whole family out and see, and it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see what those box office numbers do, because I'm really interested to see how well Zootopia performs, because it was as popular as it is, but it is also going up head to head with another juggernaut in Wicked. Like, those audiences I don't feel are not overlapping as much. Like, I feel like they overlap very much heavily. Like, we'll see what people decide to do, and I imagine the theaters are going to be very filled this week, and I'm excited for that because we want the movie theaters to do well too, because obviously we love movies as much as we do, and we know that a lot of times they struggle and things haven't been doing well, but I really feel like these two are really solid back-to-back type of films to really help the box office, especially going into the end of the year, very strongly.
Yeah, and Zootopia 2 starts earlier in the week, too. I think the first screenings start on Tuesday this week because of the holiday. Normally it's Thursday. Wednesday has started to become like a extra early special preview, but because of Thanksgiving being on Thursday, it's starting on like a Tuesday, so it's going to have a much bigger run up as well, because they don't expect as many people to be out on Thanksgiving other than, you know, those who don't have a family to spend time with to go to. But yeah, it's getting a little bit of a jump start, so Wicked doesn't have the lead up all the way to Thanksgiving Day. The Zootopia's kind of kicking in there as well. But you think like a lot of people saw it opening weekend are going to go back and see Zootopia 2 this week. But you may have a lot of people who weren't able to get into showings going back to see Wicked this week because we had to hurry up and get to, like, we didn't get into the early showings. There was an early showing on Monday of last week that we didn't get into because it sold out immediately. Like, we missed out on some of the early screenings because it sold out that quickly.
I cannot tell you how disheartening it was to have so many of my friends get to go see this movie before me, because we're usually the ones that see it before them, and they were all like, haha, we got in before you did. And I'm like,
Yeah, I went to check, and it's like, oh, there's no seats left.
Right, yeah, and we're usually on it. That's how fast those tickets went. We're usually getting them 3-4 weeks ahead of time in some cases. Like, we plan it out that far ahead, but man, there was nothing to be found with that. Those were gone immediately, and that just once again speaks to the overall popularity of Wicked as a property. So phenomenal job for them.
Yeah, so head over to our Discord, our socials. Come talk about Wicked for Good with us. Let us know what you thought, because, you know, critically it's not doing as well as the first Wicked, but it feels like the fans are similar around us, that there are flaws and there's some issues, but overall they still did a solid job with it. So come let us know what you thought.
For sure. Let us know what you think, and we'd love to have that conversation with you. I want to pivot us now into our second film of the week. We have The Running Man. Now, this is starring Glenn Powell. This is another version of the Stephen King novel here. The previous one, obviously famously done by Arnold Schwarzenegger. This one, I feel, was so much more faithful to the actual Running Man story in here. So you have Glenn Powell, who is playing a character named Ben Richards, who has a very sick daughter, and he's struggling to afford to pay for her cancer treatments and her sickness treatments. I think in this one they say she has the flu in this one, but you can kind of play back and forth which, you know, what the kid has, but the kid is very sick. They can't get her the meds she needs. So in his desperation, he basically tries out at the network for a variety of different shows, but they wound up placing him in The Running Man due to his, you know, somewhat violent tendencies and his ability to just basically take a butt kicking, which plays out in several ways in this film. But this one was definitely interesting. Like, I had a fun time watching this because, you know, especially from the previews, that it's going to be silly. It's going to be over the top. It's going to be, you know, a good old-fashioned, like, action thriller type film. And you get Glenn Powell really shining in this film, I think. I had a lot of fun watching this one, too. Like, I didn't know if it was going to be kind of a mixed bag, but I enjoyed this. Like, this was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, this one you can almost relate the story a bit to Wicked because it deals with, you know, it's kind of a dystopian future where the rich are rich and powerful and everyone else is struggling to survive. Yeah. So you basically got this inner working where all the rich live is your Emerald City, while everyone else is, you know, trying to find jobs just to get by, and it's not paying well. And yeah, Ben, he's working all these dangerous jobs, but because he tries to stand up for what's right and for the good people, he gets blacklisted and he can't get a job, and his wife has to go work at sleazy clubs and he doesn't want her doing that, so he's trying to find whatever way he can to support his family. And yeah, you think something as simple as being able to buy medicine for the flu would be, you know, really simple and easy, but in this time it's not. Like, it's life or death when you have something, because the lines are super long and everything is expensive, and it's very political. It's very much about the rich controlling everything to the point where they have people competing in game shows where they can die because they're playing these games with people's lives. You've got Hunger Games, you've got, even like I said with Wicked, it's very much about the rich having full control over the populace to where they've brainwashed a lot of people into believing that they're the good guys while everyone else are the bad guys, where they're, you know, this Running Man game show takes place out in the real world. And they tell people, well, if you see them, you report them, you'll get money for it. And if they're killed, well, you get more money for it. So they're playing up on the populace that, hey, if you report these people, these 3 people are out there trying to win money, up to $1 billion new dollars, as they call it. And there's a fun little cameo piece that's tied to the money in this. If you're, a fan of the original, which is going back and looking at it, it took place in 2017. The dystopian future, because it was filmed in 1987, their dystopian future was 2017.
30 years, man. It's 30 years in the future, and we're well beyond that at this point, too. Like, we're 8 years past that, like, where that is. But, yeah, it updates this in a really modern type way, too, because you have, like, technology involved in it. You have the use of AI, especially. This was, I think, a very telling story about the dangers of AI, too, because you have, these contestants are required to film videos of themselves, at least, what was it, like 10 minutes of video
10
every
minutes
day,
a day
or something like that they have to upload. And, as part of the rules of the game, like, you have to upload new videos of yourself every single day. And you see what happens when they can kind of take that and twist the narrative and make these AI deepfakes about you to kind of morph the narrative into a way that they want to present as like this television production that they're doing. And it's a really interesting story, but man, the action on this was a lot of fun. You get, basically Glenn Powell running for his life, and he gets help from certain people. And, a little special shout out to Michael Cera's role in this, as well as like a guy who really helps Ben out in a very funny like sequence with him and his character here trying to, fight the powers and, create a more optimal future for people where people aren't struggling as much. Like you said, it's very politically leaning. It's a politically leaning story anyway, which, go figure, this is a book that was written in 1982 and is still apropos for what's kind of going on in the world today, really, almost over 40 years later now that this book came out, and it's still kind of applicable to situations going on today. Some would say even worse. But like it was just so much fun, man. I really enjoyed it because you get a lot of the absurdness and the over-the-top campiness of the TV show and the presentation. Like, you have Coleman Domingo as Bobby T, who was just a ton of fun in this, as the bright smiley face and the MC of the show, who's, they play some fun with that too. But it just, I got a lot of enjoyment out of this, man. It's just one of those, like, it's not the best told story and it's not the best overall shot, but this is just one of those, I love to call them palate cleanser movies, where it's just, you just go in and turn your brain off and just go have a good time. Like, you're not looking for super, super deep meaning. They try to a little bit, and I don't think they're as effective with that, but just good old-fashioned action on the run, trying to survive type film. That it was fun, man. I had a good time.
Yeah, because it got some plot holes and plot problems. For sure. Because, this is spanning not just, if it was just taking place in this kind of dystopian cityscape that, like, they're just having to hide and run here, but it goes to different cities and towns. So you're to expect that this corporation and this military police group have such control over the entire United States, which is part of the story, especially with the, the president of the United States is involved and I guess okayed with this show going on. But the police and the hunters arrive within 5 minutes of a report happening, whether he was in this city or he's 1,000 miles away in another city. Like, the reports happen so quickly. And it's also, there is some fun because it's futuristic, because you have, planes and other things that are more futuristic cars and floating drones that record, but also a throwback to kind of the 80s when it was written and when the original was done, because they're recording on mini tapes that they have to put in a mailbox and send out instead of, just upload on YouTube or go live on Twitch or put it up on the cloud somewhere. They have to physically, which plays a part of the show because it's also a way that they can track and find, where the contestants are. But there are some plot holes and some nitpicky things you can get because, you've got these people who are on the run for their lives and they know that they can die. And it's supposed to be part of the story as well, with at least 2 of them are not really caring as much of that in public. But with Ben, he's doing it for his family. He's trying to survive, and he's going out there, but he's going to hotels, and he's going to motels, and he's going to places that would be really easy to track, and he's looking out windows without shutting up all the blinds and stuff and kind of giving himself away. And it's like, if you were really, and you didn't have a whole lot of time to prep with it because, yeah, he was trying out for the other game shows where you're not, there's chance of physical harm, but you're not going to die in them.
Right.
And he didn't have a whole lot of time to plan for it, but it's still like, all right, you're running for your life. If I'm going somewhere, I'm shutting the blinds. I'm not looking out. I'm not leaving rooms. If I have to, like, I'm staying really down. And he ends up getting help from several people. But it's like, well, he could have stayed there and probably lasted the entire show. Or, well, why did this person, as you said with the Michael Cera's character, like the twist and turn with that was like, I know he's a little crazy, but would he really have done what he did in that sequence? It was a fun sequence, but again, it was like, this is a guy that you set up this story with, that he's been affected by the hardships of what's happened to the police state and everything else, and then he is helping this guy and hide, and he's just this guy who's prepared for every situation. He's prepared for if the hunters or the police show up, but to deliberately cause something to happen as it did, it was like, I get that they wanted to have some more fun, but it also is a plot hole.
Sure, for sure. Yeah, there's plot holes throughout the entire film, and it's one of those, like I said, you just got to just turn your brain off and enjoy it, because you could sit there and go, well, I wouldn't have done that, or I wouldn't have done that, or I wouldn't have done that, or I probably would have done this a little bit differently. Like, you can nitpick it to death, and for good reason. Like, it's absurd, it's silly, it's over the top, but it's meant to be, and it really leans into it very heavily in this film, which I appreciate, because if you're going to go in, just know you're going to just go do the most absurd stuff, have your guy get out of these situations that are like, there's no way that it would have happened like that, especially with like the grenade scene and some of the other goofy things. They're just like, yeah,
it's kind of that classic 80s hero movie where the hero always survives everything, no matter what.
The indestructible hero story. And you get that in full effect here with Ben, where you think it's like, oh, there's zero chance he's got it, because they literally have him going up and down the stairs, like, and he finds a way out of it. Like, it's just, it's so silly. But I love that, though. Like, I like a good movie like that, where you could just, like I said, turn your brain off and just enjoy it. Like, it's not the deepest movie. It's not, it's not the best film I've ever seen in my life, but it's one where you're just like, heck yeah, man, let's just watch this and let's just have a little fun for a couple hours. And I think they were very successful with that.
Yeah, and I mean, it was fun to watch. Like, it sets you up with that emotional plot of Ben doing it for his family, and his wife didn't want him to do it, and he wasn't planning on doing it, but you get the manipulation from Josh Brolin's character being the head of the studio, of, the promises of the money and everything that he gets, and, all that. And because most of the story really revolves around that, of the dangers of allowing things to get to a point where people are okay with a TV show where people were killed, and reporting people for money, where people have gotten so desperate because the rich and powerful have taken over everything, that people are desperate and will listen and do whatever they want. Like, it's really about that. And yeah, it definitely adds more into it, because Arnold's was very much more campier, almost like Mad Max like, because you had much more elaborate costumes and vehicles being armored and everything else like that. You get some big vehicles for the police and stuff, and the helicopters and all that, but it's less campy in that way, that it's not feeling, it's dystopian, but it's not Mad Max dystopian like in there. But it definitely went into more about the dangers of how the rich and powerful can use AI for manipulation and control and everything else. And that's, again, relating back, like, I didn't realize just how much it would relate to Wicked in that way of, the Wizard of Oz is manipulating the people with all these tricks and gadgetry and everything else. And it's very much a very same thing, where he's the head of this network, has the president and everyone on his side, where he can do these shows where he can kill people and nothing happens to him, and it's good for ratings, and it's a popular show and the people love it and they watch it, and they control the narrative of everything. And so it was interesting, because I hadn't watched Arnold's in a while, and I haven't read the Running Man book that Stephen King put out, so I really only had Arnold's movie to compare it to. I do know that they made even with this one that's closer to the book, there's still some stuff they
Sure.
did that isn't the book because the ending is quite different than in the book as well. But I think, this is one that you have to go in, turn your brain off, go with the ridiculousness of it, ignore the plot holes, and you can have a fun time with it. Because if you go in trying to really look at the plot and the points and his journey throughout this, it's like, yeah, he does a lot of dumb things that you don't think this guy who has worked all these dangerous jobs, who has to account for so much stuff potentially going wrong with these construction industrial jobs, who's dealing with explosions and bad weather, that he'd be a little bit more calculated with his movements than he actually is.
Yeah, and one thing they do a well enough job of is character motivation, right? Obviously, his very clearly laid out motivation for why he's doing what he's doing, and you know, like you get that at the bare minimum, you get why he's doing what he's doing, obviously, and then you know you kind of keep that tone throughout the film. He's just like, yep, got to do this, got to save my kid, got to do this, got to get my family. I'm doing this for my family. Like, I have to do this. We have to get out. Like, they really hammer that point home throughout this, and you don't really ever lose that. And I appreciate them doing that. But like you said, it's not a perfect movie by any means or any stretch of the imagination. It's just a good, fun, run around and try not to die indestructible hero film. And I think they did that. I think they did that very solidly. I really do.
Yeah, it feels like it's trying to be an 80s indestructible hero movie, but done in a modern day. And I think Glenn Powell is, you know, good in this. There's not a whole lot of layers. Like, he is kind of one note, that he's a very angry guy who's angry at the world because he can't provide for his family, and it kind of stays that one note throughout it, but it's still a fun, enjoyable, and you know, there's some sequences that are done really well, other sequences that are just kind of more silly and done, but it's, again, you turn your brain off to it, you can have a good time with it. It's not gonna win any awards. It's not gonna be like that. It's very similar to the 87 Running Man. It's just something to kind of turn your brain off to and watch and be silly with. Because like I said, Arnold's was much more campier. This still has some of that camp to it, but it does keep a more serious tone than Arnold's did. And of course, because Arnold's was throwing in every one-liner that he has ever said, introducing some new one-liners for him. Like, he says, "I'll be back," which he already said in Terminator, or would be famous in Terminator, and just like tried to just throw almost last action hero. Like, they were just trying to throw as much of Arnold into that movie as they could. And this one kind of goes apart from that campiness to give you a little bit more serious, but still over the top adventure. And like, it had some good action. It had some fun to it, but it's got plot holes.
For sure. And it's not lacking in any of that area, but The Running Man is kind of an updated version of the Arnold classic. Obviously, this is done a little bit more faithfully, adapting Stephen King's work into the film here. It's not without its issues. There's plot holes in it. There's stuff. But if you really go into this film and kind of go understanding it's going to be over the top, it's going to be crazy and wild, and just go in and have a good, fun time watching, you know, kind of a throwback to like the indestructible hero movies of the 80s, where you just know that your main character is probably going to make it out, and he's going to go through the most ridiculous things possible to make it out. You're going to have a good time. For that, I like to give movie scores based on the rewatchability. For me, I'm giving it a 7. Like, I got a lot of enjoyment out of it. I do plan on watching this film again when it comes out on streaming, just because it's just one of those, like, hey, I'm going to throw it on and have a good time, just kind of watch some absurdness. And I think they did an effective job of that, so it's going to score a little bit higher for me. Like I said, it's not without its issues as far as like plot holes and pacing and everything like that. It's not a perfect film by any means, but by God, it's a lot of fun. Just go enjoy a fun action movie with like your typical indestructible hero trope, and just go have a good time with it. I think a 7 is a really solid score for the film for me.
Yeah, I was back and forth between a 6.5 and a 7. I think I am going to land on a 7, just because there is some rewatchability with it. If you're, continue to turn your brain off to the plot, because if you're focusing on the plot, like we typically tend to do with a lot of stuff, that it's not as enjoyable because you can see all the holes and flaws and stuff with it. But Glenn Powell is solid in it. Yeah. Josh Brolin plays that executive that you want to hate fairly well, even though he doesn't have a whole lot to do in it. His scenes are mostly short, but there's enough in it that gives a little bit meat to it. But yeah, it's a fun film that has its issues, but you can have an enjoyable time, and does take us back to those 80 indestructible action films, as you said, that we enjoyed growing up seeing. That it's a new film that's trying to feel a bit classic in the way that it presents itself, because those were humongous hits throughout the 80s and 90s, and this is trying to recapture that magic, which is mostly successful in doing.
Sure, for sure, and it's just a lot of fun, man. It was fun to go see it in theaters. I know I went and saw it while I was on vacation in our week off, but like this was just, you could just go and I was smiling watching it. It was just like, okay, this is like really goofy and really silly, and I enjoy that in my action movies. I don't need my action films to be like super, life changing and funny. It's like, I just want to see stuff blow up and guys run and fight and do all that stuff. And you get plenty of that in this, man. You get a lot of things I like out of my action films in this. It doesn't have to be plot heavy in this one. And I kind of could tell that going in. So I was able to enjoy it a little bit more. But like, had I expected a little bit more of a serious take on something, I probably would have been disappointed. But I kind of knew, based on the way they marketed the film, like you knew it was going to be silly and over the top. I'm like, okay, I can go just turn my brain off and have some fun with this and have a good time. If you go in with those expectations, you'll enjoy it too.
It's one I forgot Lee Pace was in the movie until like the very end, when you get a big reveal with his character and stuff. But because I've enjoyed, like, ever since Pushing Daisies, that short-lived show, I've loved what he's done, and he's been in The Hobbit, and he's done
and in the
MCU. With Ronan and everything. Like, he's been fun to really watch his career, because he's a really good actor, but he shows up in stuff that you almost don't expect him to be in. And when it finally got through, because you're kind of waiting for this reveal, I'm not trying to spoil it, but you get the reveal and it's like, oh yeah, I remember seeing his name like being a part of this film, and I didn't even think about, why haven't I seen him yet? And now you get it, and he was fun. Like, he's just such a good, solid actor that can do the campy, crazy stuff, but can also do some really serious, solid stuff. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Like, again, if you like the action indestructible hero movies of the 80s, if you like the original Running Man, this is a different take, but I think you're still going to enjoy it. If you enjoy the campiness and the over-the-topness of that version, you're still going to have that, probably as much fun as you did with this one as you did with the Arnold. Like, the Arnold, for a lot of people, is still going to be a classic, even though it wasn't as close to the books as it was, and he was wearing, a bright yellow jumpsuit in that one, and this one's more subdued with having him in the red and everything, but it was still fun. It's one that, you've got to turn your brain off to, but if you do, you can have a lot of fun.
I always enjoy going back and watching some of those classic films that try to take place in the future and what they think the future is going to look like. We still need our flying cars. Where are those at? Like, it's the running gag, but yeah, it's always fun to see it, especially knowing when it takes place.
All the way in the future of 2017.
We're so far beyond that now, and none of that stuff looks like what it looks like, to an extent.
So we've passed the Running Man, we've passed Back to the Future now.
I know, it's just like, man, when are we passing the Jetsons at this point? You know what I mean?
I need some ibuprofen.
Right? It just makes me just realize that, I'm not a young man anymore, which I happen to experience several times on my vacation that I just got back from. And I've missed this. Like, we haven't done this in 2 weeks now. It felt weird taking a week off, but I was thankful to kind of get out and kind of recharge my own personal batteries, even though I was busy the entire time I was gone. Didn't really get to rest all that much while I was out, but I got the mental recharge that I needed, and I'm excited to kind of get back into our groove here as far as like reviewing films and stuff. This was fun. I was telling you before we started recording, I watched this literally day one of my vacation. Like, I flew into Florida and saw this film literally right after I got my car, and even before I checked into the hotel. That's how dedicated I am to making this content, but I knew that was going to be the only time I had really to watch it before we really recorded, unless I did like you did and watched it.
And I watched it
literally yesterday, so there was a little over a week gap between you and I both seeing this film. But yeah, man, I'm excited to get back into this. We got some stuff coming up to close the year that I'm really excited for. I'm really excited for next week, and we'll talk about what we're going to talk about, obviously, but it's fun to get back in the groove. But yeah, man, I missed this last week. I'm glad we got back into the groove here.
And it was fun to see the parallel. Like I said, comparing Wicked for Good with the Running Man, you wouldn't figure that these would have too much in common, but at the core of it, it's dealing with a ruler who is controlling all the people, and only if you're in the good graces of the rich and the powerful do you feel good about how your life is, while everyone else outside of that area is struggling and having hardships, and no one wants to see in that group inside of the walls want to see that the people that they trust are doing wrong and bad, and no one will listen. And it takes heroic efforts from Alphaba and from Ben to get people to start opening their eyes too. Yeah. It's funny how that kind of worked out doing both these films together, and they both have some very similar parallels with the political side of the story that they're trying to tell.
Yeah, very thematically similar in some ways that take about it, but two very different films. But I was excited to watch both of these, and I'm glad we did. I'm so glad we finally got For Good. I know we've been chomping at the bit to see it since we raved about Wicked, Part 1 last year, and excited to finally get the conclusion to it, get to see it. One more movie off of our previews that we see literally every week. I know it's a running gag. We're just like, sometimes we just get into these movies, like full transparency. Sometimes we go to these movies because we go weekly, obviously, because we're doing content every week. But a lot of times we're just like, man, I feel like I've been staring at this trailer because it's in front of every movie we've seen for like 3 to 4 months, it feels like. And it's just like every time we go to the movies, it's like, okay, I'm excited to finally see that one, to get that trailer so we can get something new to put our eyes on. But that cycle is always fun, and Wicked was definitely one. Like, I love Wicked so much, but it felt like that trailer has been in front of almost every single film, save for maybe the horror movies we've gone to see, but every other film we've seen in like the last 6 months, it feels like, since they put a trailer out for it, has been Wicked. So we finally got to it. It's been here. And
it's also kind of surprising because a film that we are reviewing next week, we actually haven't seen the trailer that much in front of stuff that, we got Zootopia 2 coming up this week. We will be reviewing that. But, I've seen the trailer online. I think I've seen it in front of one film so far. So it hasn't been as big as hit over the head with the trailer and stuff. It's still going to do really good, but it's kind of surprising that we have seen some, we've got trailers for stuff that's coming out next April and May that we're seeing. But for the last 3 or 4 months, we haven't really been seeing that much on Zootopia. But I'm really looking forward to that, to reviewing Zootopia 2. I had a lot of fun with my kids on watching the first one. They're excited to see this one. But on the other end of the spectrum, completely different. So we have part 1 of the Stranger Things final season. So we're finally getting the rollout. We're getting the first part here at Thanksgiving. The next part will hit at Christmas. And then the finale we get at New Year. So we're rolling into the end of Stranger Things, which has been a very long time coming.
I am so excited that Stranger Things is finally here. It feels like it's been forever. It's been 2 years, but it feels like it's been way longer than that for some reason since we've had it. I don't know, it's just because we're doing this podcast and we're doing weekly episodes, except for last week, obviously. But I'm excited that it's finally here. We finally get our dive into season 5. We get 4 episodes that we're going to breeze through and watch before we record. I'm going to watch this several times, as I have with every other season of Stranger Things, but excited that it's finally here. We finally get the end of this, what is really like the OG Netflix show. We're coming up on the end of it. It feels like it's been forever. And by the time it finishes ending, we'll still have the entire run of Stranger Things before we get Grand Theft Auto 6. We'll have the run of the entire show. Think about that. The running gag online is we got this before we got GTA 6, but we've literally gotten the entire series of Stranger Things before we get that game.
We literally had them start as kids, and Millie Bobby Brown is married and has a kid, before this final season has come out, because it's this season 5 took 2 to 3 year gap in between. The last season was a 2, it's 8 to 9 years or something from season 1 to season 5 here to wrap it up, that it took quite a long time to get these 5 seasons.
Yeah, and it's finally here, part 1. I'm excited to get these 4 episodes and check them out and talk about them this week. Ton of fun. I think it's 4, 2, and 2, I believe is the drop.
I think so.
Something like that.
It drops Wednesday night. These first 4 drop Wednesday night, so before Thanksgiving hits, you can start binging Stranger Things season 5.
You already know I'm going to have it watched by Thanksgiving, but just really quick, if you're watching this and you live in the U.S. this week, happy Thanksgiving. I hope you get to enjoy the time with your families. Enjoy your time off if you get to take time off of work, obviously, but enjoy the time with the family. This is one of my favorite times of the year to really rest and reflect and spend some time with family and think about the things that we're thankful for. And obviously, we're thankful for all of you for listening and watching and interacting with us as you do, and it's always appreciated. But enjoy the time with your family for sure.
And eating as many deviled eggs as you possibly can.
Stretchy pants, baby. Wear those sweatpants and just enjoy the food of the day. But yeah, it's it's a great week, and we're excited to watch these two things and talk about them next week for sure.
Yep. So have a good Thanksgiving. That's it for this episode, and we'll see you on the next one.
To find all of the episodes of We'll Bring the Popcorn, go to our YouTube page, hit the like and subscription button so you're getting our episodes when they drop each and every Monday. If you're listening to us in the audio room on any of the podcasting platforms that we're on, please don't forget to give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And don't forget to go to willbringthepopcorn.com, where it has all of our archive videos, all of our social media information, as well as our merch store, so you continue to support the show in that way. We cannot thank you enough for your continued support.